Next, we have a trainer panel. A remarkable young lady who works at the Jockey Club, Cathy O'Meara. She is one of the industry initiatives coordinator, and she also is head of the Racing Officials Accreditation Program. When we were having discussions about what our program should be like for this summit over a number of months, she kept talking about her experience as an exercise rider. Now, Jamie Hayden and I, as you might guess, are not exercise riders, so we don't have the frame of reference. And Cathy kept talking about things that disturbed her. Certain times, some trainers seemed to think that they just relied on giving the horse a tranquilizer so he'd get around the track in the morning. And we just got to think, okay, Cathy, you've got this frame of reference. You conduct a panel. You get some trainers together and have a very frank discussion, again, always geared towards the safety of the horse. We're going to try to separate, not talk about training practices that help you win or something like that, but things that have to do with safety. All those things are compatible, of course. So, Cathy, are you ready to take over? Okay, I will present Cathy O'Meara, who's going to introduce her panel. And it looks like we're running ahead, so maybe we can really have even a longer session here. Thank you very much, Cathy.
Thank you, guys. If you just give us 1 minute, these guys did have to work this morning, so we appreciate them taking the time to come out this morning. So.
Rock and roll.
Good deal. All righty. Well, thank you. We do have a distinguished panel here today. We have Mr. Tom Proctor, Mr. Phil Sims, and Kellyn Gorder are here with us today. And again, I thank you guys very much for taking the time, because I do know you're very busy, especially with the meet going on. And I'll try to promise we're not going to give out any training secrets so that everyone will start winning. And, you know, we want to keep you guys at the top, too. So thanks again. For the audience this morning, thank you again. We wanted to focus, as Ed mentioned today, this panel is on horsemanship. It's really the backbone of our industry, and the importance is, you know, it's very important to understand the horse is the key for a successful training operation. This is not only, we don't just want to get to the winner's circle, obviously that's important and we care about that, but it's also very important to make sure that we're keeping our horses sound, safe, and ultimately that their welfare is in mind. And lately there's been lots of things out in the media, the blogs, you know, that have questioned, to be honest, the level of horsemanship that's out there, be it maybe training schedules, medication use of equipment, overuse of that, and overall trainer experiences. So with pretty much medication aside this morning, although if we touch on it, so be it, but for the most part, we'll leave that to the side if we can. I'd like to discuss how all these things are intertwined, all the aspects of training a horse that can sometimes you know, that there may be hurdles or constraints that might be in your way, and how you overcome these and what you do when you're faced with these challenges. And I've spoken with many trainers kind of leading up to this panel, and as Ed mentioned, I was on the backside for quite a while, and so I'm kind of interested as well, just from, you know, a personal standpoint. But one of the things when I was speaking to one of the trainers that stood out that you know, really resonated in my mind was that he said that you really have to make sure you have the right horse with the right rider, and I'd even extend that to staff, your groom and your hot walker as well, and with potentially the right equipment for all of that to kind of have a nice synergy. So with kind of that in mind, I'd like to begin this morning. Kellyn, you're actually the first to my left here, so you'll be on the spot first. But these basically, I'll ask a question if you guys want to, you know, answer at will and kind of give your opinions, and we'll kind of, you know, just kind of keep it open and candid and feel free to discuss. But the first question I have is along those lines is, how important is it to have the correct exercise rider or staff, you know, be it your groom or your hot walker, working with the right type of horse personality, and how do you go about determining that combination?
I think it's key to matching the right rider with the right horse. And
oh, are they on? Let's make sure.
I think you can take it out, can't you?
Yeah, I think it's key to match the right rider with with each individual horse. And the way we do that is, you know, every rider has his or her own strengths and weaknesses, and you just try to find the right rider that fits each horse. And for example, if I've got a really fractious, nervous filly, you know, I'll put my calmest, coolest rider on her back, and she might, you know, give that horse confidence. And then if I've got a really strong colt, I might put my bigger guy rider that's big and strong. And the main thing is you watch your horses and see if they're happy when they're coming back from the racetrack. And, you know, I don't like to see my riders getting in fights with the horses. So.
Great. Phil, anything to add? Oh, sorry, only 2 mics. Just go with it.
It's okay. Yes, what Kellyn said, that's what, in my barn we pretty much try to do the same thing. I will switch riders around sometimes on horses if I think they don't get along with a horse, or I might just get their opinion, a different opinion on a horse. If they get on a horse day in and day out for a while, I may put another rider on that colt or filly just to get another opinion from them. And that's one thing we do rely on our staff a whole lot, even grooms to hot walkers, how the horse is doing. Even though I think all 3 of us individually here, we do see our horses every day, but we do rely on our staff quite a bit to relay to us how they think the horse is doing, how it feels today, and how the hot walkers on how the horse may be cooled out and so forth. But the staff is very, very important for us.
All right. Well, pretty much what they said. I think not all riders fit every horse, and you just try to find the ones that they get along with that'll make the horse accomplish what you're trying to do with them. And I'm not going to lie to you, the better horse is going to get the better rider. I mean, anybody that says not different, they're, you know, you got a stake horse, you're going to put your best rider you can on them. But mostly in general, you want to see the rider get along, and if not, you make changes, and personality doesn't come into play when it comes to that.
Great. Oh, no, please.
And I want to add one more thing too. Even Tom said personality. In a race, jockeys to horses a lot of times will try to match a jockey's personality to horse's personality. So we may have somebody that's really light hands, doesn't use a stick a whole lot, try to ride a filly that doesn't want to be whipped in a race. So we will switch around on that. A lot goes into it when we're deciding maybe who to ride on a certain horse in a race also.
Great, thanks. And along those lines would be the, I guess, trying to find the qualified staff. You know, obviously the racetrack, it's kind of a different dynamic. It's not like you're posting job listings, you know, for the most part. So how are you going about finding staff especially with licensing is so varied, you know, some are just pay a fee, you get a stable hand license. Others are, you know, you actually have to gallop for stewards or outriders. So how do you kind of make that determination? Do you select one over the other? Do you, you know, check credentials or, you know, and feel free, Tom, if you want to.
Okay, well, you know, racetrack. You're going to be somebody fires, you end up hiring them. And unfortunately, I try to pay my staff well to try to get the best I can get. One thing I have, you know, in the last few years, I have looked to these equine programs, not so much for gallop help, but for management and stuff like that. I've worked with University of Louisville and hired some of their kids as interns in Louisville. And you know what? I picked up a couple good help that way, people that are employed by me now. And you know, as far as riders, you know, you watch them in the morning. When they come by and ask you for a job, you either like them or you don't. Sometimes you think you like them, and once you hire them, you don't quite as much.
I would elaborate on Tom. We're watching our horses train in the morning. We're also kind of watching the other exercise riders for other stables, kind of see how they do. We kind of notice it out of the corner of our eye. We might get a few that we kind of like, hey, that rider's pretty good. Someday if that rider becomes available, I would like to have them in my barn. So we will kind of, maybe ask them, hey, if something ever comes, if, you quit your job or you don't want to travel to where the next track they're going to, come see me. So that's kind of how really we do get a lot of our staff in that way.
Mm-hmm.
One of the things that is really important to me in my barn is a positive attitude. Sometimes you get people that have worked on the racetrack for 25 years, and they might be very experienced, but they come to work in the morning, and sometimes you wonder if they even like horses. And so sometimes I tend to hire somebody that's young and has a lot of enthusiasm for the game before I hire somebody that's kind of sour. And because I just like that positive attitude in the barn.
Great.
Some things that I think are different since I was a kid. Used to, your grooms hung out in the barn all day. They were betting. I mean, they were working on horses to bet on. And I mean, I saw grooms when my dad fired them would literally cry because they were losing their horse. And I question that nowadays, how many grooms I have really love their horses and, will take the extra time because, hey, they're going to bet their paycheck on them. And I don't see that as much as I used to. I do try to find people that actually like or love horses. I think that's very important. And like Kelly said, go to some younger kids sometimes, but sometimes the younger kids like to walk in the paddock with the horse but don't want to muck the stall out or do the rubbing and stuff like that, so you have to watch it that way too.
And Kellyn, actually another question for you, because you do gallop a lot, you obviously have a background in lots of breaking and those sorts of things. Do you find it's, I don't want to say easier, but I'll say easier to kind of assess a rider's abilities because you're out there with them, or I mean, do you see any difference there in that situation?
Yeah, I mean, like a lot of times if I don't know a rider and they're coming to interview for a job, I'll put them on 2 or 3 horses and maybe even gallop next to them. So, I think that's advantageous for me. If I don't like the way they ride, I'm not going to hire them.
Right.
So.
Definitely. Alrighty. And kind of staying with that, but switching a little bit. Equipment that you might choose to use. Some, like I mentioned before, when I was talking to some of the other trainers preparing for the panel, some mentioned that, well, I don't quite have the right rider, but I have to, utilize a certain type of equipment to assist that rider, to assist the horse. Any takes on that or feelings toward equipment's uses for that reason, or any?
Equipment we use on horses is it's for the horse, not the rider. I mean, some riders may, I need this on the horse for a certain reason because the horse is getting, but we try to really use less equipment as possible, number one. We may add blinkers or change a bit or change a different type of nose band for the horse, but, okay. But we do try to, in our barn, I think everybody starts out with less as possible, add a couple of things if you need to, but try to do what's for the horse.
Sometimes change the riders better than putting more equipment on. One thing I've noticed, and this is riders coming from different barns, one thing about it, ace promazine will make a bad rider good, a good rider great. Now, unfortunately, I think it's overused now just because some of the assistants I have to kind of break them out of that habit of wanting to train them on it too much. I'm not going to tell you I don't give a horse some ace every now and then in the morning. Horse has had a few days off walking after a race, and it's a filly that might want to tie up, I might do that. But in general, I don't like to train on ace that much. But I think it's one piece of equipment or not equipment or medication that's being used way too much in morning training. As far as equipment, I probably use less than anybody. I mean, I take more horses over there with the snaffle bit on and more European style than, than some trainers tend to take everything over in figure eight or something like that. If they need it, I'll adjust and use it sparingly. So we'll see.
Great. Basically, I have the next question. It kind of segued in very, very nicely. It's still on the equipment, but I was going to ask if you felt equipment was being overused, and you kind of answered that a little bit with your answer there. But basically, blinkers are kind of the obvious thing because we see them, they're visible, we can tell. We always see a lot of lower level claiming races. For the most part, you'll see them in them. Same with like kind of run out bits or very harsh, severe bits. Do you think that some of these pieces of equipment, they're being used maybe to fix a symptom of a behavior as opposed to kind of trying to find the underlying problem with the horse, or maybe just to get them to the races, or just kind of some thoughts?
That could be the case, maybe in some stables. We do have training now, as Tom mentioned, when his father was training, trainers are hands-on. Now, some trainers are and some are absentee, basically rely on their assistants to train the horses for them. They have several divisions. So you'll see the cookie cutter type of equipment that most horses train in the same equipment. All of them, they all race in the same equipment. And sometimes if a horse does need something special, they don't look for the underlying cause of the horse, say getting out in a race or in the mornings, or their breathing problem with a noseband or something. So that's that is, I think, why you see some horses maybe have more equipment than others. And some barns will use more equipment than other trainers will.
Yeah, I mean, like using that example of if you've got a horse that's getting out, instead of putting a burr on the outside of the snaffle or the bit and putting a run out bit, it's better to try to figure out why that horse is getting out. I mean, it usually there's an underlying physical problem going on there, and it might take a little more work to figure that out, but at the end of the day, you're going to be better off.
All right. And on staying with that as well, if you're a new horse comes into your barn, say, and you look up its past performances, and he's got everything on it. Do you make any changes or make any assessments on the horse, or kind of how do you evaluate the new horse coming in and potentially, maybe one with lots of added things?
Yeah, what we do when a new horse comes in a barn, we'll keep an open attitude. Kind of just evaluate the horse over a period of time, with equipment also, with everything with the horse actually, and then, but the equipment. So we'll just, and then maybe just add some things. We try to actually run as less equipment as possible, make the horse comfortable, and not just make them so where they just don't want to do it, because too much stuff is, I think a lot of equipment is overused, and we like to just make it simple and comfortable for the horse.
Any more to add?
Well, it depends how the horse is performing. If he's doing good, I'm going to ask that guy what he's been doing on the horse a little more and kind of go along, and I might make changes. But if that horse is doing good, I darn sure going to find out what he was using. But, less is better most of the time. But, you keep an open mind. But if he isn't doing any good, I'm going to start from scratch.
Definitely.
That's usually why we get a new horse in our barn. They're not doing any good somewhere else. The good one doesn't get moved, does it?
It's true.
Good deal. Well, one other thing is, that's always been brought up is kind of the training environment that we have. Obviously we've got restricted training hours because we're racing in the afternoons. At most of the training facilities, we don't have the luxury to stay open. Limited turnout for the most part. Do you think that this, I don't want to say limited training environment, but it is our training environment. Do you think that this predisposes some of the horses to these behavioral problems, physical problems? And how do you think we may alleviate some of these problems with our track environment. So, whoever wants to jump at it, Kellyn?
Okay.
Or,
Well,
or Phil?
one thing I do, I have a farm in central Kentucky, and we're based at Keeneland 8 months out of the year. So I have fortunately that I can take horses to my farm, and after a race, give them a few days, just a couple hours a day paddock time. They're still in the same routine as they are at the racetrack, except they're going in a paddock with grass, individual paddocks, coming back in. They're still getting their 11 o'clock lunch, and they're getting done up. But it's just a whole different. Let them relax some, and they just love it. And then we might even gallop on the farm for a few more days, and then come back to the track. Just depends on the horse. But the fillies really love that type of routine race, farm for maybe a week, and then back to the track, and it really seems to help them recover from the stress of a race.
I've trained at some training centers where we had paddocks and fields to gallop in, and that's a luxury compared to what we deal with when we're at the racetrack. And there's some tracks that you look around and all you see is concrete. So here at Keeneland, we do have round pen turnouts that are available for us, and there are some fields in the back behind the barns there that we can ride in, and we take advantage of it. But when you're on the road, I mean, you're pretty much limited to the stall and the track.
And there's one thing we may do with horses. They're all different, so there's no program. Each horse does. I may just say, hey, pony up filly today. She looks like she just needs to be freshened up and do something, keep her happy. Fillies, colts can they can kind of do the grind a little bit more, but we'll switch them up as well. But that's one thing we've got to keep them happy, because they're all stalled a lot. We do have the luxury here at Keeneland of, say, the round pens and a lot of grass. So we graze our horses twice a day, and that gets some sunshine. It sure helps them a whole lot. When you're at other tracks where there's no grass, the barn area may not be as nice, a lot of concrete. We just do anything we can do to keep these horses happy in training, and try not to overdo them. And that's to say, we use a pony some on some horses, and people don't pony as much as they used to. You don't, Tom, I mean, you can probably see that. Yeah, I do too. A lot of people still don't. A lot of people never.
I've got a lot of ponies.
And I have my own pony, and I don't gallop horses, my own horses, but I'll go pony some of them just to see how they're doing. Mm-hmm. And it's really, I think it helps us a whole lot to do that, and just.
One thing about it, Keeneland's a little special that way. There's a lot more room to do certain things with a horse, but most time when you're at different tracks, main thing is I try to get every horse out, let him be a horse in the afternoon, whether it pick on grass or walk around the shed, or take his front wraps off where you might see if he's got a problem. But just get him out and let him be a horse. Even if it's for 5 minutes, just let him be a horse, just for a little bit. Get them out of the stall every day. Of course, tying up fillies, it helps them the more you take them out and fool with them, the better they are. And, we talk about ponying horses. I do it quite a bit with the fillies. The boys handle their training a little more, but a lot of fillies want to train more than they're really capable of withstanding. But as far as facilities and everything, let me tell you, my dad and Charlie Whittingham, they trained in these racetracks, and they made do, and I think we can too,
Great. Well, speaking of the training in the morning, one of the things that our committee's discussed, and we've had quite a few people speak about it, is, I don't want to say wrong way, multi-directional, or training both directions on the track. We've talked to some tracks, some say, well, it's just not logistically possible. Others say, no problem, and then for whatever reason, it hasn't happened. We have a few training centers we know that are trying it and seeing if it works. But if you had that available to you, would you want to train both ways? Do you think it's helpful? Do you think it's a waste of time and we're all fine with the way we go? So just kind of throw that out to you there.
I think there's a possibility of that happening maybe an hour late in the day on a training track or something like that. You'll laugh. I've worked on farms and run where we would train like Monday, Wednesday, Friday, counterclockwise, and then, the Tuesday, Thursday, Saturday, we train counterclockwise or whatever. But anyway, because I never liked saying we do things the wrong way. I never liked that. I'd always say we don't go the wrong way. But you'll laugh. I think it's helpful because, we tend to put a lot of pressure on a horse's inside joints or even their, back end problems. I think if you kind of would even it out a little bit. Now, you're going to laugh. You'd have to train your riders. Because I tell you, I used to get riders from racetracks when I was on the farm and tell them to go the wrong way, and I swear they'd almost fall off the first week or so. They really would. It would be like they would lose their balance going the opposite way. And it was one of the things that I used to laugh about on the farm. You get somebody I was in Florida at the time, and I'd get riders coming down from Kentucky, and heck, for the first week or two, they'd be absolutely lost going the opposite way.
I'd be all for that if we could train horses both ways, but it's not really the mechanics at the racetrack now don't allow that. But we do jog horses. If I want horses to go the wrong way, I'll go to the training track and maybe jog 2 miles the wrong way as opposed to a gallop. Now, sometimes the exercise rider may cheat a little bit on the horse lope when the outrider's not looking, but I'm all for it, and I do try to do that to farm as much as I can. I think it's good mentally and as well as physically for the horse.
Yeah, I've practiced counterclockwise training too at different training centers, and I think it's good for the horse's mental aspect of training too. And sometimes at the racetrack you get a horse that's what we consider trying to run off the right way, and if you turn them around and gallop them the wrong way, they don't take as much a hold. So I think it would help.
And do you guys utilize any, if available, obviously, hill courses, pools, any of the kind of the therapeutic type things that are out there now? And what do you think their benefits are?
I may swim a horse occasionally. Maybe a horse that's come off injury, surgeries. In between racing, seldom. It's just not, it's hard to do and be on top of the horse. You have to, the horse is getting what you want it to be getting because we don't have swimming facilities at the racetracks. I will take horses here. We have the luxury of, we do have a fields here at Kellyn we can gallop in. Up and down hills, we'll do that. And also, we'll do that to farm. We have a figure 8 mile-an-eighth gallop. We'll do that. So we do try to utilize that as much as we can. And it's not so much for young horses as the older horses that are racing, and just to give them a different, mentally and physically, a different atmosphere for them.
Well, if we had a swimming pool, I think you'd use it some on the racetracks. There used to be one at Hollywood Park. If you had some horses that maybe had some concussion problems in their ankles or something, you'd swim them out. I've never been a big proponent of that. But if, maybe vary every now and then. I work with a guy in Florida. He swims his babies before he gets on them. Gets the yayas out, and you know what? I always thought it was pretty good. He'll take them out and swim them in the morning, and then when the riders show up, they get on them and go, and it kind of, that's what I always say, you're just getting the yayas out of them. But I wouldn't mind having a swimming pool available for certain horses. It wouldn't be bad. It wouldn't be something I'd take them over there a lot, but I would swim a horse now and then, do something different.
Yeah, I think I would use it if it was available. I did take a trip to Australia a couple years ago, and every racetrack there, has swimming pools available, and they use them a lot.
Great. We're kind of on that same, you just mentioned getting the yayas out and everything, kind of nice segue into the next question I had, was basically, does it matter where or how a horse is started, a yearling, or possibly an older horse that may come in new to the track? Some of our young horses, varying different degrees of breaking styles. We have your long liners, that want to make the mouth first and then get on their back. Others on the back first, then make the mouths on the horse. And then, obviously, as you mentioned the ace aspect, you hear the rumors of people giving them the 30-day tranks before they ship in, and you get one that may be a little more docile when it first arrives. So how do you kind of deal with all these differing, I guess, styles or methods of horses coming into your barn? Do you have a preference? Do you ever speak with the farm owners or owners of the horses coming in, and do you have a preference on how they're started as young horses before they get to you?
We try to start most of our own horses if possible. It's not always the case, so horses come from other, South Carolina, they break a lot of horses there, Florida, some locally here. And we always do, if a horse is coming in from another trainer or a two-year-old trainer or farm, always do discuss with them the horse. And if at all possible, I will go see the horse also train before we even arrives to our barn at the track. So that helps a whole lot too, and kind of I get to know the horse a little bit, how far along it is. But most horses thoroughbreds are great animals. They're really just easy to start, and we do them just like they're any other breed. Some people do get scared to say, "What's a thoroughbred?" But we break them like they're going to be just a regular riding horse, and then we'll start the conditioning later.
Well, through the years, I've mostly trained for Glen Hill. I train publicly now, but I've been very fortunate that my family in Florida breaks. Most of my horses have in the past. I tend to get horses now from other people, and I do like to go watch them train. I'm based in Florida in the winter and get to see a lot of the horses go and go visit them. And when one comes in, I pretty much know the people that they're with. So if there's a problem, they'll tell me, and they'll tell me where they're at with the horse and stuff like that. But, I just want somebody to go very slow with them and not get too big a rush at any time. And I think most of these horses are broke before we break them anymore. I mean, heck, a lot of these times these horses have been in a sale for 3 times before they ever get a bridle on them. So, I mean, they've been handled, and they're not like when I was a kid. Heck, they might not see a person before they come into us. And there's a big difference of breaking that kind of horse versus one that's been handled all his life.
Kellyn, I know you have a long history of breaking, so any other?
Yeah, I mean, that's what my background was. And, when I worked at WinStar, we start 75, 80 head a year. And, I think it's the most important part of a horse's training, is because everything else is based on that foundation. So, I was a big proponent of natural horsemanship, and so like now when I'm training on my own, if I have a chance to start my own colts, I will, but sometimes you don't, and they come from other places, and most people are doing a good job out there.
All right, great. Okay, and after that, you get the horses in and all those sorts of things. You've kind of assessed your horse, and you've hopefully found the right combination of staff and all that.
Do you have
one more?
One thing.
Yeah,
I want to add one thing to that. One thing that I do when we're starting the horses is I do not let the exercise riders know the horse's pedigree.
Oh, okay.
Because they may have been in other farms, they go, "Oh, that horse is by so-and-so, oh, God." So we do not. The sales halters, if they've been in sale, the sales halters come off. There's no pedigree on their halter, and they will never know until probably the horse gets to the track, who they're by or who they're out of, because I just don't we want the riders to have confidence. And if I have a horse I think is going to be a little tougher, I'll switch exercise riders, but where they're hands-on, the ground person is so important when we're starting these horses, these yearlings, and we try to build the trust and the confidence in these animals.
Great. Well, then basically moving on is I was looking to then kind of switch a little bit of how you assess your fitness on a horse, when you think it's time to back off, or even give the horse time off. And then kind of lastly, following up with that is kind of the retiring question is when do you make that decision for a horse too? But basically starting out with kind of your assessment of fitness and walking through kind of the life cycle. And if you guys can talk a little closer for the mic, so thanks. Go ahead. Kellyn?
As far as assessing a horse's fitness goes, I mean, the first thing I look at is I look at my training chart and, you know, kind of track how many days that horse has been galloping, and then look at, you know, the sequence of works and how many works they've had, and then you watch your horse as it's breezing, and you know you look at how the horse gallops out after a breeze, and you watch your horse when he comes back from the track. Is he blowing hard, or if he's, you know, recovers within the, you know, 5 seconds? I mean, you know, your horse is getting pretty fit, and if he gallops out really strong after a half, he's probably ready to go 5/8. I mean, a lot of it's just common sense. And you know, I've tried I tried this device called the E-Tracker, which is a GPS device and a heart rate monitor that goes on the horse, and it tracks your heart rate as you go through a workout, and then it puts it all into this neat little graph, and you can see how fast your horse recovers. And that at the end of the day, I think I got more just by watching my horse cool out after work. So
I've also used different devices like the heart rate monitor and so forth, but we step the horses up in conditioning. As they're young, they start, and we will give them also some fast gallops as well as breezes. And every day they don't train the same; they'll train different, which what we're trying to accomplish. Just breeze. If they're going to breeze in company, we try to have them go with another horse they're competitive with. We don't want to overdo one. And also from a fast gallop, a 2-minute clip, or a breeze, I'll personally be at the barn, see what the recovery time is on the horse, and try to check the heart rate also. That's important. And but you also rely then on your hot walkers. Hey, Bob, I don't take the horse to quit drinking or quit nostrils to quit flaring, and it's a lot of athletics. If you've been athletic, you kind of understand, and you get to know your horses. And if you have a horse that's mainly racing and been doing pretty well, but it's coming back off a half-mile breeze and blowing a lot, you can think, well, maybe there's something bothering this horse. So you may call the vet, you may scope the horse, or maybe examine it a little bit more than you normally would after a race or a work.
Pretty much what they said. You know, we do sequence of works, you know, building up 1/8 of a mile, you know, starting with gallop outs, 1/8 of a mile, quarter. Similar to what a pitcher, he don't go out and pitch 9 innings in spring training, he'll go an inning or 2. And same thing, assessing your horse, watching them afterwards, if they're corded up, or, you know, how much they're blowing, how much they recover. The main, you know, it's pretty much just hands-on how you can tell. You know, you've got to watch your horse and just see how they're doing most of the time. If you'll listen to them, I'm not into being a horse whisperer. I'd rather listen to what they're trying to tell you, and you have to watch them and after works and as you're going up your whatever regime you have with the horse. I think sometimes you even back off. Maybe he's not handling it. We're going to back off and go a little slower with this when some of them tend to go get, are more apt to handle what you're doing to them. And fitness is all, routine and watching and hoping that they can handle what you're doing to them.
And kind of with that, obviously with all the retirement, second career programs that are out there with horses now, trying to get that horse, sound to the next career. Obviously, we want them to be race horses. That's why we're in the business. We enjoy racing. But there obviously comes a time when either for whatever reason you have to make that decision. Kind of from a trainer standpoint, how do you assess when to maybe make that phone call to an owner, or when to make that decision on retirement or potentially second career?
Well, of course, we try to have owners that have the horse's well-being at stake, and that's the horse comes first, always. So if we see a horse maybe not performing as well, or it's maybe getting a bit of a health issue, I'll alert the owner. I says, we're not just this horse. Maybe we need to think about something else on this guy. A lot of times your geldings can make great riding horses, dressage horses, and there's always folks out there that are willing to take these horses and train them. The fillies may be brood mares, or they may go to another career. They also make good dressage horses. But we try to, before the horses, so they have an injury before it gets too major, or some horses just after a while they quit. I'm tired of running. I don't want to do it anymore. You can't make them do it. We'll stop, be looking for a new home for them and a new career.
Well, pretty much a horse will tell you when they're ready to retire. Sometimes it's physical, sometimes it's mental. They don't want to do it. Fillies tend to do that more than colts. I think I've got 9 ponies that are ex-race horses. So when these retirement centers come by wanting donations, I tell them to bring a load of feed over for me, because I've got a lot of retired horses doing for me. They tend to leave real quick. And besides that, about 5 or 6 broodmares I own that are retired race horses of mine. But horses will tell you when they're ready to retire. Or a lot of times I don't have that problem, because people claim off me all the time. I don't have that decision. As soon as I drop one in, they usually take them. So I don't have that as much as a lot of people. But fillies tend to, they can be sound, but sometimes they just, don't want to perform like they do. If they've had a hard year and ran and performed well one year, the next year is a different year. Maybe they're a little different. Maybe some of the things that they don't perform as well the next year, maybe because they ran hard, and it's, you don't want to cheapen the horse sometimes, and you retire them too.
Anything to add, Kellyn? Nope. Okay. Well, on that though, what if you have an owner that's pretty insistent? They don't want to retire. They want to kick on. How do you kind of broach that subject with them? You really feel it would be in the best interest of the horse, and the owner is, he's the owner. He would like you to keep running it. We have some chuckles.
Well, pretty much you insist you're not going to race a horse, and then they'll either go along with you or they'll move the horse to a new trainer. And that does happen sometimes. But, when enough's enough, and you try to stop before it gets to that point, but you do run across it from time to time, and then sometimes they will take your advice, and sometimes they'll just stay in their ground and they'll give it to another trainer. But eventually, the horse, they spend more money, and no results, and the horse still needs to be retired. So you do run into that.
You were laughing, so. Alrighty. We're almost finishing up. Just a few more questions. I know we've discussed a lot of different varying things today, but do you think that, as a whole in the industry, our horsemanship is going down at all? There's not as much hands-on as there should be, possibly. Maybe, and it's through a few questions for this. Maybe there's too many trainers, maybe the testing protocols are too lax. I mean, is there anything that you would see as saying it's declining, or why we're not having as much hands-on with the horses?
You know, I looked at that question before, and I think there's some real good horsemen out there. And I think in the past there's been bad horsemen. 30, 40 years ago, there was bad horsemen training horses. I think there are some now. But, you know, I think your modern horsemen that you have now, they stack up pretty well. Problem I see is some of the horse owners are a little bit not quite as horsemen as they used to be. I mean, used to people had farms, they raced their horses and stuff, and now, I mean, when horses become a commodity, to me it becomes a problem. You know, this is a game, it's a sport, and, you know, horses come first. And, you know, I do see a lot of these people owning horses that probably have never been around a horse or not, where in years past, they had a little bit of a background. Not everybody, but I think more percentage-wise so than it is now. But I think there was bad horsemen on the racetrack 30, 40 years ago, that there's not, you know, and there is now too, you know. So I don't think it's changed that much.
Yeah, I agree with Tom. A lot of owners now don't know horses or agriculture like they used to. So I do run into that problem from time to time, trying to explain some things about a horse. Well, a horse isn't doing quite right now. And the horse can't, I shouldn't enter in a race. And they really don't kind of, well, what do you mean? They don't understand, and you really have to force it down them and try to show them examples because they think these things are machines, and of course they're not. And that is an issue that we do have from time to time now, more than we used to. The trainers, you do have more absentee trainers now than you used to, more program type of trainers. But that's just the way I think the whole business world has evolved. Things become more corporate, and also maybe training has become more corporate, and you have one head man and you have several assistants, and so, but it works for them. So I'm more of a hands-on person. I'm there every day. I have 26 horses bedded here at Kellyn, and I like to see them, know what they're eating, know what they're doing, and everything. You have other trainers that aren't that way, but they do great jobs, and the horses run well, so I can't argue with it.
I think there is still a lot of good horsemen out there, but one of the biggest complaints that I hear from some of my owners are, you know, they've been in a barn where their vet bills were more than their training bills, and I mean, to me that just says, I'm not necessarily that guy's not a bad trainer, but maybe he's just relying on the vet too much. So
I think what happens when a trainer is more of an absentee trainer, that he does rely on a veterinarian to assess a horse day in and day out, each horse in his stable at that certain racetrack. And so the trainer, I mean, the veterinarian is going to say, we get a little problem here, and so the veterinarian's got a free rein and to do what he wants to do with the horse. Maybe some things like that are overdone on day in, day out basis. Nothing major, but just little things probably that, because I do have that same complaint. I have clients have horses with other trainers, and they do say the same thing. Gosh, my God, we can't keep doing this with these guys. The veterinarian bill is more than a training bill, because I'm kind of anti-veterinarian, really. I mean, we kind of tell the vet what we need. We kind of assess the horse first before we call the veterinarian to look at the horse. So they're not going to get rich off me. The vets aren't, so we do keep it at a minimum. We do what's necessary maybe, but sure don't overdo it.
All right. Well, you brought up the med question kind of there. How much do you think, as you say, vet training is kind of going on? I mean, that's not really a probably not the best way to ask the question or to address it, but do you feel that is it too much in the backside? And are we overusing, the medications that we have during training?
I don't know. I don't know what other trainers do in their barns. I don't see anything going on. I am pro Lasix. Horses do bleed, and they bleed. You don't know when they're going to bleed, but the damn things do bleed. Okay, that's just the facts. And Lasix does help that. And if you're going to bet, I like to bet on some horses now and then. I mean, that's what keeps this thing going. I'm going to bet with a lot more confidence if a horse is running on Lasix than not running on Lasix. So that's, and I think I know it's kind of a big hot topic right now. But I say I don't use very little medication, but Lasix is one thing that we're in the trenches every day, on front lines, and we see it. And that is one thing that I think we're wasting way too much time and energy on. We've got other things we need to be looking at. In 30 years of training, I've never had one person come to me, a bettor, and say, I'm not going to come to races anymore because you ran a horse on Lasix. But they wish they didn't bleed, but the facts are they do bleed. And you never know when they're going to bleed.
As far as medication, certain outfits, I think, tend to do a lot more injecting and stuff. I tend to give them a little more time, and I'm in a different situation. Most people I train for will let you give them time if they got problems. I am pro Lasix, and Bute shot's fine. Those are two medications that are probably as cheap as drug as you can, and that is helpful. As far as I've got my opinions on injecting and hyaluronic acid. I think Canada has a deal where you have to wait 30 days after you inject a horse, and I think that might not be a bad idea in some cases. I might inject 1 or 2 horses a year out of the 75 I have, and I'm usually not very successful at it because that's not my MO. But I think some of the stuff I heard out of the reports was pretty bad, where a guy, every time he runs a horse, he injects the hocks, both knees and ankles. That can't be too good for your horse.
Pretty much went straight to the next question, Tom, so thank you.
And I think that's what happened. I think maybe it probably goes back to the absentee trainers again, that maybe their horses are getting steroid injections more than the folks that see the horses every day. And because we know when to back off a horse. We're not on a set program. Well, this horse has to breeze today. Well, no, the horse right now, get a little feeling in an ankle or something. Let's ice it today. Let's hose, cold water hose. Let's do it up in a poultice. Let's see what we got. But if it's on a program, the trainer's not there, then the horse is down to work. It works. So I think that's where a lot of maybe guys inject more than normally, say, Tom or Kellyn would. We just don't. I don't think we're not the folks that do that.
Kellyn, do you have anything to add on that? He's going to hide.
I mean, I don't really use medication that much, so, but, I think it's one of those topics that we're just going to keep hearing more and more about it. I'm sure there are guys out there that are overdoing it.
All right. Well, great. We could probably go ahead and segue. Ed can come up. Since we're running really ahead of time, so if we have any questions, I'm going to pass it over to Ed here for a moment, and I'm going to steal a mic. So. Thank you.
Yeah. Thank you. Since we are ahead, I would like to open it up for questions, and I'd like to ask this panel. I was interested in what you said about bad trainers years ago and some today. What are some of the things that you see that you consider, don't name names, of course, some of the things that you see that you consider not just poor horsemanship, but it's not in the best interest of the health and safety of the horses? Are there instances where you just kind of grit your teeth when you see what somebody else is doing?
a couple of things, more or less just the care of the horse. You see how the horse is presented when they're in training in the morning. They might be a little raggedy looking, and maybe having bad exercise help on a horse and always out of control, stuff like that. There's certain outfits will always be bad in the gate. Always have horses bad in the gate, bad in the paddock, things like that. Running over you in the morning, because the rider can't control their horse. And also putting them in the wrong spot. You see a lot of trainers, you always look up and they're running their horse over their head or ask them to do more than they can. So that's some of the bad, horsemanship you see. We all make a few mistakes. Hopefully good horses overcome it.
Thank you. Any questions from the audience?
I don't use clenbuterol very seldom. They say it has a steroid effect, horse builds weight. I don't know if it does or not. They say that's why some trainers will use that. When I use it, I'm using a horse maybe has a little respiratory issues because they are bedded out on straw. Barns, as much as we try to eliminate it, there is dust in the barns, but like my hay comes, it's all West Coast hay, it's clean and everything else too, but you still do have horses with respiratory issues, and that'd be the only time we would use clenbuterol. Now, there may be some outfits that do use it on a daily basis, but I really can't elaborate on why they use it or what their reasoning is. I don't think it's used as much as maybe the press says it is. I don't know, but what do you guys think?
Well, I'm not real for the 21-day or 25-day withdrawal. You might as well not use it. I'd be more apt to say 5 days out. I do think if you run on it, it would be a big advantage if I was running on it and you weren't. So I do want some kind of withdrawal time there. And I don't really know the study on that, but my thought is somewhere around 5 days ought to be enough. But 21 days, I don't think. If you got a horse, 21 days, you got a horse comes back, he's got some crud in his junk. I'd hate to think that, you're going to put him on a 2-week treatment and then you've got another 21 days before you run him. I don't go along with that.
With the hardest part of it, say with 21-day withdrawal of clenbuterol is our condition. We're racing with a lot of extras now. We're kind of keeping a horse. We don't know for sure when they're going to run, always. We try to maybe every 3 or 4 weeks, depends on the horse, of course. But the racing condition book we're aiming for may not go, may fill, so then we may have to have plan B, go back, and an extra may pop up for this horse. So if it's a 21-day withdrawal in clenbuterol, which I do have very few horses that we do give clenbuterol to, but still that horse wouldn't be able to race, and an extra comes up, we enter in 48 hours out or 72 hours out. So maybe in Kentucky we have a short period. Some states are 7 days. I would go with a 5 to 7 day withdrawal on that, just so we could race the horses.
Kellyn, you have a comment?
I think it, in some cases it is misused. If you've got a stable of 100 horses and every horse is getting clenbuterol every day, I think that's a little bit sketchy. But, it is a therapeutic drug, and, if you've got a horse that comes back and it scopes bad, you want to get it cleaned up. You want to help the horse. So I'm like Tom. I think, 5 to 7 days out from a race is sufficient.
I'd like to ask a question too. This trend, maybe it's not fair to generalize, but there's so much publicity about the major stakes horses, of course, and there seems to be a continuing pattern of trainers wanting so much time between races. I remember somebody commenting, I wish the Jim Dandy was more than a month before the Travers. And someone my age, that thing, good gosh, Round Table would have prepped twice between those two races. So what's your take on strictly what's best for the horse? Is all that time between races better for the horse? And do you think that the training use of medication has an effect on how often a horse, how quickly a horse can come back? That's a sort of a double-edged question.
My thought is if you took all your statistics away, you wouldn't mind running a horse that much. Like, there's a lot of owners won't give you a horse unless you're over 20% and stuff like that. I think you'd see a lot more people running horses more if you didn't have that. I always chuckle. I go, if you're going to put my stats out there, I want to put the breeding farm, the breeder's stats, because then I want to know who to buy horses off of when I go to sale. But I think trainers tend to run a little less because they don't want to run unless they've really got a shot instead of what's helping the horse go along. I kind of laughed. You know, I've run a horse and run it back, and they go, boy, you're running a horse back quick. I says, well, heck, he was ranked his last race. I don't want to have him too fresh when I run him. I'd rather him be a little tired. But I really think you're laughing, but the stats, when they put the trainer stats out there, they have definitely changed a person's attitude about running horses.
Wow.
You know.
I would definitely agree with Tom. The response to that question. That's why a lot of trainers, I think, won't run a horse back that quick, especially in your greatest stakes, your most important stakes, and also they get their finger pointed. You shouldn't have run a horse, even though it wouldn't have anything to do with running a horse back in 3 weeks or whatever. They get because there's a lot of more stable agents now, advisors, and that somebody's going to blame, and the trainer gets to blame for maybe the horse is doing great, but he runs back, he just runs a clunker. But what if he runs great? Well, but they won't. Yeah. And Charlie was like, he was on pins and needles because I'm running. I said, don't worry about what everybody else says. Yeah. You know, just you know your horse. And but that's kind of really. That's the reason why on these major stakes, I think that they're afraid to run them back too quick. It's not anything to do with the health and welfare of the horse. It's the horse is doing. I mean, trainers, the safety and the health of the horse is most important. They wouldn't run a horse back that wasn't able to do that. And of course, but that's what it is. It's the stats. Well,
come up there, yeah. Now, if any of the earlier presenters could come up and take questions from the audience too. Okay, any more questions?
One of you gentlemen, I don't remember which had said that many of the owners these days are not horse people as they had been in the past. My question is this: when you get somebody like that who has, the money to spend, in my humble opinion, the owners and the bettors are the customers of this game. So what can you do with these people who may never have been on a farm to educate them as to what constitutes good horsemanship while, maintaining a good owner-client relationship with them?
Well, since I was the one who made that opinion, you're all right. The bettors and the owners are the business. If, as far as what I am, it's the horses and the owners. But I think you take time to explain, and if they spend time at your barn, they can see that if you are a good horseman and are a horsewoman, they can see the difference if they look, elsewhere. If you do a better job than the next person, they can see how you have happy horses or your help likes horses. I mean, I get that a lot. People say, well, when I come in your barn, all the horses look like they're happy, or you know, then the people are nice to them and stuff like that. But so I think you would just have to take time to explain stuff. And you know, there was owners that weren't horsemen before that were very prominent in this business. And the more they're in it, the better horsemen they become.
And elaborate what Tom says. That's what we try to do. A new owner in the business, let them come by the barn and ask questions. Don't be afraid to ask what we're doing. I try to explain some things too, what we're doing and why we're doing what we're doing with the horse, and then they kind of start to get it.
Another question?
Tom, you've been around a while. What do you think of the breed today as compared when you started out and in your dad's day?
I'm not so much, I think the breed's fine. I think some of the things we put horses through when they're young is different today than, you know, first thing is there's a lot of horses been through 3 sales before they ever get a saddle on their back. I prefer a horse that's never been in a sale, to be honest, or maybe go through 1 sale. At least he's got some handling that way. But I mean, I kind of chuckle. I think I used to think that we're kind of breeding a lot of brilliance and speed in them, but heck, I got all distance horses now. So when I was young, I had a lot of sprinters. So I don't know if that's true. But I do think some of the factors are how they're getting raised, how they're going through these sales. One thing we didn't have when I was real young is these 2-year-old training sales, and I think it ruins a lot of horses. I mean, I don't know how many go through every year, but do 6,000 go through every year, or do 5? Well, the horses I get from some of those sales, some of them are prominent, and they win stakes, and those are the ones you hear about. But the other 80% or 90% might be destroyed. And, you know, that ruins not only our, you know, if you multiply it by 3 and you ruin 2,000 or 3,000 doing that, then those are 2 or, you know, maybe we got 5, maybe we got 6,000 that aren't racing because of it. Breed, I don't know if we could change it in 30 years. I mean, evolution's not that fast, and we're kind of making it seem like, you know, we don't have a round table anymore. I think environmental more than the breed.
Dr. Arthur?
Yeah, yes, 2 real quick comments. Talking about vet work, I was Tom's father's veterinarian for 5 years. I thought I was doing part of his work. I didn't know I was doing all of it. So I don't know how somebody like your father, as superb a horseman as he is, how he would be competitive today. You just don't see trainers like that. But he did have the owners, he did have the time. Second comment is in terms of the clenbuterol regulation in California, that was actually a horseman-generated request. And the quarter horsemen in Los Alamitos love it, think it's great. We've had very little problems with it in the thoroughbred circuit, and there's been more positive comments than negative. 5 days isn't going to solve the problem. You might be able to get somewhere around 14 days, 15 days rather than 21, but you know, that's an issue for another time. The question I have, which kind of goes from this clenbuterol question, is 4 years ago, anabolic steroids were banned. There was a lot of comments we weren't going to be able to fill fields and horse racing was going to fall apart. How has that changed your training and your medication patterns, and do you miss them?
Well, I'll be honest, I wasn't very good at giving them anyway. I mean, some of these guys knew how to put them together and do that. I've always trained a little less and gave less medication. Maybe the last year or 2 I tried to kind of go along with the flow, but I hadn't missed them. Maybe the odd horse, I'd, you know, turn it out and I'd say, well, maybe it wouldn't hurt if that horse had some steroids or something, you know, maybe an old gelding that's lost his rear end, or maybe he had EPM, and he, you know, you've treated him for EPM and he still doesn't look good. You know, given time, maybe that's okay. But far as horses in my barn, maybe 1, 2, 3 out of the whole bunch I've got that I said would benefit from having them.
I don't think most trainers have missed the steroids any at all use. I never was much of giving it anyhow, so it doesn't really affect me one way or the other.
Yeah, I started training after they were banned, so it doesn't really affect me. I guess I did work on, you know, some of the farms that I worked on in the past. We'd get horses off the racetrack that you were pretty sure had been on steroids, and you know, you would watch them fall apart a little bit the first 3 months that they're on the farm. So
I think what Kellyn's talking about, we used to get yearlings out of the cells. They would be on some steroids, and you take pictures of them when you get them home and send the email the owners. Like this nice yearling I bought, you'd come maybe 2 months later, look at the horse. Well, that was the same horse I bought. But that's really the main experience I had with steroids. Is you can tell some of the yearlings had been on it, and to build the muscle and the look.
Well, it's funny you talked about the sale. I never really gave much steroids at all, and then maybe the last few years I gave some. And one thing that got me to giving it is I would be at Kellyn, and I was watching these horses in the 2-year-old training sale, and I even asked a prominent vet, I said, what the heck are they doing to their horses? And he said, he would tell me the regiment that these horses were going through. And I mean, these horses, they come up, they were looking like monsters, and they're 2-year-olds. And then, you know, I always thought it was kind of odd, you know, they could, I thought for sure they should ban it from sales way before they did racing, because you'd see it more in that. The first year you didn't see it, didn't have it at the sale, horses all of a sudden looked normal again. They didn't look like they were ready to run as yearlings, a lot of them. And, you know, it's kind of a disadvantage when the guy you buy them off of could use steroids and you couldn't use them to race.
Question?
When you see the level of sophistication of cheating in the Tour de France and bicycle racing, do you have any concerns that there's anything at all like that going on in our sport?
I don't know. I'm too busy in my barn at 4:30 in the morning looking. I really don't. No, I don't. I can't lead a horse in a paddock and have any concerns about somebody else is doing this or doing that, because I think most of us we're too busy training horses and taking care of animals to be chemists, and so it's not really a worry to me at all as far as anybody else cheating or doing anything else. Because I don't see it happening. I'm going to say it's not, maybe some, but it's not a concern to me.
You know, makes you wonder 1 or 2 people might be doing it. I'm not smart enough. You got to be pretty intelligent, I think, to do it and think you can get away with it. I'm for freezing some samples on people that they think that where they don't have tests for it, that maybe in 3 or 4 years they would. You know, especially if they think a guy, you know, might be taking the edge. Give me a fast horse, and I'll outrun the guy that hops him every time. You know, give me the best horse, and you'll be better off. That's the way to look at it. Take care of your best horse. He'll outrun the horse that's hopped.
Okay, thank you very much. I appreciate the panel's tolerance. We've kept you up longer than you bargained for. We're going to move to lunch now in the Limestone Room. At 1 o'clock, the next session will be on pre-race inspection, and we will have a demonstration. So at 1 o'clock, please go to the walking ring behind us here, and then we will have the demonstration, and then we'll move back in for additional comments on pre-race inspection. Thank you very much.